Sorry, Igor. I should have told you right away. But I just didn't have the courage. I'm marrying Volodya. Igor was silently listening in some kind of stupor to what Anna was saying on the phone. His beloved Anka, for whom he was ready to do anything, with whom he had watched the sunrise just a few days ago. All of this didn't make sense, and it seemed like some kind of cruel joke, a silly prank. It seemed like the girl would laugh now and say, "Fooled the fool for £4, but She continued to quietly explain something. Volodya and I don't want to lose you. We need to keep our friendship, and I'm calling to invite you to our wedding." Igor ended the call in some kind of devastation. The state of shock covered him with a suffocating wave. He, embracing his head with both hands, screamed like a wounded animal. Losing two dear people at once, his beloved girlfriend and best friend, was unbearably painful. Even though they say men don't cry, the sorrow from the feeling of betrayal was stronger than him. Igor felt hot, salty tears involuntarily rolling down his cheeks. "So, invite them." Swallowing a lump in his throat in anguish, he spoke vengefully. "There will be a wedding for you. And there will also be a fool's exit, something to laugh at. I'll show you, traitors." What he was going to do and what he would show, Igor had no idea at that moment. All he knew was that early in the morning he'd get in his car and head to the wedding of his ex-friend and former fiancée. He tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep. Memory kindly supplied him with happy snippets like movie frames featuring Anya, her smile, the look of wide-open eyes, blonde hair waving in the wind, remembered how they met, and the gel went through the steam. He saw a girl swinging on swings. She was literally soaring above the ground, like a small light butterfly. There was some kind of special magic in this spectacle. Igor froze, unable to take his eyes off the stranger. Anya absorbed all his attention, made him forget about everything and everyone. His heart belonged only to her. Igor still thought that Anna felt the same way about him, but as it turned out today, he was deeply mistaken. "She lied to me, she lied all this time," he thought, unable to cope with insomnia. As dawn barely broke in the morning, Igor got up and set off. Villages, small towns, roadside cafes and stores were flashing by outside the car window. As he was approaching the city, he suddenly realized he was terribly thirsty. Igor stopped at a small roadside shop where all sorts of things a traveler might need were sold. Next to the store, on an overturned wooden crate, she was huddled in a knitted sweater from an adult's shoulder. A little girl, about 6 years old, was sitting there with a bouquet of gerberas in her hands. Strange, such a little one has been sitting here alone since early morning, Igor thought, entering the shop. Emerging with a bottle of water from the kiosk a few minutes later, he lingered near the girl. She looked at him with pleading and sadness in her eyes. Like an old woman, it flashed through his head. "Uncle, please, buy some flowers. I'll not keep you long," the little girl said almost in tears. Igor flinched. This voice and this pleading look made him feel uneasy. "Sure, I'll buy it," he replied, feeling for his wallet in his pocket. "How much is your bouquet? Since you don't mind, uncle, just give it and that's it." "Thanks for that," said the girl. And again, Igor was amazed by her adult words. He really wanted to know more about her, but a sense of resentment and a desire for revenge were now taking over him. Pushed forward there, to the wedding of two traitors. Igor quickly pulled out the biggest bill he had from his wallet and handed it to the little girl. She scaredly waved her hands. "Uncle, what are you doing? That's a lot. Take it. Don't take it. Go home. You don't need to sit here on the highway. You're still too young for this." The girl smiled. Dimples appeared on her cheeks, and freckles suddenly danced happily on her upturned nose. At that moment she seemed to Igor so sweet, close, familiar, that he could not resist and asked, "And what's your name?" She blushed, but replied, "Alenka. You have a fairy tale name. It's beautiful." "Well, goodbye, little sister Alenushka," he said, heading for the car. "Goodbye, uncle," she shouted, and, waving at him, cheerfully ran towards the village. How little a child needs for happiness, thought Igor, arranging the bouquet on the next seat and moving off. He was driving, imagining how he'd walk into the registry office with this bouquet, how he'd throw flowers at the two traitors' faces, look them in the eyes, and will leave with pride forever, to never see them again. "That's how I say goodbye to them," he pondered. Pulling up to the destination, Igor parked the car near the institution, where his beloved will soon become the lawful wife of another man, ex-friend of Volodka Klopov. He took the bouquet, twirled it. A small note was visible on the side. He smiled, remembering Alenka's freckles and the dimples on her cheeks. Then he opened the message. In a child's small hand, large printed letters spelled out words on a piece of graph paper. "Thank you for buying these flowers. I grow them myself. Your money will go to my mom for medicines. Thank you for helping me and my mom. Your Elena." Igor froze. The piece of paper trembled in his hands. Can such flowers be given to traitors, even if you decided to throw them in their face? Of course not. He looked for someone in the crowd with his eyes. His gaze fell on a sad woman who, hiding behind a column, was watching the doors of Zach's. Igor confidently walked towards her and extended the bouquet. "This is for you." The girl looked at him in surprise. "Me? And for what? Just because?" He saw how a faint smile lit up the stranger's face, and she seemed to him very pretty. Igor decided to call off his revenge. "I have more important things to do than to arrange a concert at the wedding of people who are not even worth a scandal," he decided. "We need to find Aliona. Find out how else we can help her and her mom." He returned to the same store on the highway. Alenka was not here. Only a wooden box on which she had recently sat stood by the porch. Igor went into the store and, turning to the smiling pink-cheeked saleswoman, asked, "Where does the girl Elena live?" "Well, along the main street. Their house is the third from the end on the right side. And if you get lost, ask someone. Everyone in Berezkino knows them. Catherine is sick, while Alyonka, Mom's little helper, is growing up. Although she's little, she understands everything." Igor left the store and lit up. "Oh, Berezkina, such a familiar name. Well, of course, Berezkin once lived in this, now his former friend, Volodka Klopov. He came here 7 years ago, returning from the army to visit a friend, and stayed for a few months. Igor had nowhere, and no one to return to especially. Igor slowly approached the house where the girl and her mother lived, and the closer the goal of his trip was, the stronger his heart beat, and the traitorous lump rolled up in his throat. This simply cannot be, he thought. And why now? Is this some kind of sign? Everything turned out just like that. Alenka lived in the very house near which he had been waiting for a beautiful girl named Katya 7 years ago, who swore eternal love. The house he once left for one day, only to return 7 years later. Exactly then he met Anna, and forgot about everything. Now, you're back, and indirectly the reason for this return was Anna again. Igor stopped at the gate. In the yard, he noticed Alenka, who was taking care of the flowers in a very adult-like manner. "Hello, Aliona. I read your note, and it touched me so much that I decided to come back and find out what else I can help you with." The girl blushed, became embarrassed, and with a dumb look said, "I actually put such notes into every bouquet, but you are the first one who came back. May I come in? I want to meet your mother." "Yes, come in, uncle. Let's go. I will guide you." They entered the house. It was dark and damp in Seneca, and only when Alenka opened the door to the room, the space was lit up. A young woman was sitting on the bed in the room, resting on high fluffed-up pillows, knitting something. She was terribly pale. There was no blood in her face. Medicines were lying on a chair next to her, and a water jug was set. At the sound of the opening door, the hostess looked up from cutting. "Igor, is that you?" As if not believing her own eyes, Anna asked, "Have you come back?" Igor just nodded his head, unable to believe in the metamorphosis that happened to the once young, beautiful girl, whom he probably he loved. Illness turned her into an old woman, drained all her juices. "Mom, this is the same uncle who gave a lot of money for my bouquet." Catherine sighed heavily. Tears welled up in her eyes. "That's not your uncle, honey. That's your dad." The little girl, with the agility of a small monkey, jumped up and immediately hung on the man's neck. "Dad? Daddy, you returned from space, and you will never go there again." Igor's heart tightened up. He hugged the little body to himself and, barely holding back tears, he whispered, "No, kiddo, I'm always going to be with you now." The girl then freed herself from Igor's arms, looked him straight in the eye and said, "Then I'll go and tell everyone that my dad's back. They didn't believe that my dad was an astronaut and called me fatherless." Igor carefully lowered his daughter to the floor, who immediately ran out into the street with the cries of, "My dad has arrived! Igor looked at Katya questioningly. "And why were you silent for so long? Why didn't you say anything?" Katya sadly shrugged her shoulders. "At first, when you left and disappeared, I got scared. I thought something had happened to you. And then I found out that you're happy, and you have a completely different life in which there was no place for me or my future child. And now, it's just seta."
"Who wanted to look for you? You see, I don't have much time left. And I don't want Alyonka to end up in an orphanage or with some strangers. After all, she's your daughter. You can check however you want, have tests done, but Elena is our child, yours and mine. Kate, I have no doubt about it. Moreover, we'll get ready and all go to my place together. I'll do everything to make you get better and become the old Katya." Ekaterina sadly smiled and skeptically shook her head. She opened her mouth to say something, but Igor stopped her. "Forgive me, Katyush. Unknowingly, I ended up in the ranks of traitors. I am very guilty, both to you and to our daughter." Back to his country cottage, he returned as a family man with a wife and daughter. Well, he went to a wedding and came back with the full package. Igor was smiling to himself all the way. After finding a family, his life filled with new meaning. It was necessary to arrange for Alenka to go to school, and Katya to treat. He kept thinking that if money was invested in Kate's treatment, If she was taken to a foreign clinic, she would surely recover. He put in a great deal of effort to get his wife back on her feet, and indeed, Katerina's condition was getting better. She smiled more often. Her cheeks were rosy, and she was ready for games. Hope has sprung that his Katya will definitely be the same again. Strangely, he thought less and less about Anna and Vladimir, and even felt that it's good that things turned out this way. Thanks to her husband's efforts and perseverance, Catherine lived for another 2 years, instead of the few months promised to her by doctors. One evening, when she herself got up and went out to sit on the porch of their country house, Igor covered her shoulders with a warm blanket and sat next to her. "Katie, I love you more than life, and I really love our Alenka. I do everything for you," he said. Katya gave a sad smile. "I'm very grateful to you for your love and care. I feel very comfortable with you. Most importantly, I now feel at ease about our daughter." They sat together for a long time. Katya looked at the wonderful starry sky, and she was gone in the night. Igor was inconsolable. Over these 2 years he managed to grow fond of Catherine and fall in love with her, and now often recalled the day when they sat together on the porch for the last time and watched the stars. He still went out, sat on the steps in the evenings, and imagined that Katya was next to him. Once heard light footsteps behind him. Someone threw a blanket over his shoulders. "Dad, it's cold. You'll freeze," said Alyonka, settling down next to him. "Thanks, sweetheart," said Igor, hugging the little girl and tucking her under the blanket. They sat for a long time, looking at the starry sky. "Dad, do you think Mom can see us right now?" Alenka suddenly asked. "I'd like to believe that." Igor smiled, not taking his eyes off the sky. "Look there, that very bright star is winking at us, see?" "Yes, probably. Our mother is there." Since then, a new tradition has appeared in their small family. Igor and his daughter looked at the starry sky in the evenings and waited for the brightest star. "We'll see them from above and wink." As for Anna, she once came over. She cried and apologized for behaving badly in the past. She wanted to return Igor's love. He listened to her without a trace of annoyance on his face. "I am not the one to judge you. I simply don't have the right," he said, remarking that he himself, once chasing a bright trinket, forgot about something important in life. "On the contrary, I should thank you, because it's thanks to you that I learned what real family happiness is." Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, I hope for your support with a thumbs up. All the best.